Mute button, mute button, mute button.
Mary, we could hear you.
I know, it's a miracle.
The other time, no, we could. Upstairs, we heard you.
Oh, you heard me.
Oops. You just couldn't hear us. Kelly muted you.
Yeah, we heard all that sailor talk you were doing.
She learned it from her Navy friends.
Yeah, she learned. Somebody said I learned it from my Navy friends. You hear that one? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi,
Can
Sean.
anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
I can't hear any of you.
Uh-oh.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Sean.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to
What
reboot
did
and
you
try
say?
to come back.
Okay.
Bye.
Huh. That's the second council member now that's had that issue.
Right?
Yeah.
Did he get a new computer too?
I think it's the way that Kelly set it up. I think that's what it is.
All right,
Me.
so who are we missing? Just Steve, and then Sean's coming back in.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get started. Tonight's city council workshop, and we're recording 100% virtual via Zoom, Tuesday, October 19th, 6 o'clock. We have two things on the agenda, and we will also be having an executive session. I understand that. Is that right? Everybody get the link to the executive session in their teams. Thank you. The first thing up then is pavement condition survey, Ryan and Eric.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, council. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Today, this evening, I'd like to present on the 2021-2022 Pavement Preservation Program. And it'd help if you could see my presentation, huh? Can everybody see that now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's get to it here. There we go. So I'm using this bright yellow slide here to really just drive in the goal tonight of what the purpose is, and that's that I really want to raise the level of urgency around the condition of our roadways and where they're headed over the next 6 years, and also the funding and the different scenarios that are available to us. So that's really just, the key of what I want to drive home at the end of the day. So the largest asset of any municipality is its road and sidewalk network. So our agenda tonight will be two different parts, okay? So it's going to be pavement number one, and there's a strong emphasis on sidewalks right now, and I'll touch on that, but right now it's primarily going to be pavement tonight. And I hope to come back in the near future and present on sidewalks as well in finer detail once we get all of the data compiled from the current work that's being conducted. So with pavement, we're going to cover the completed projects, what's been completed over the last 5 years, and then also the current roadway condition. Where is Lake Stevens City as a whole? What's the averages? Where are we at right now? And then I'd also like to discuss pavement maintenance. How do we make decisions? How do we come up with our different strategies with the work that we do in public works? And then also pavement funding. Where are we at now? And what funds do we see down the road to complete our goals and objectives? And then also finally proposed projects. So just a run through real quick of what projects do we have on the radar over the next 5+ years. And then sidewalks is going to be pretty similar, just more of a nutshell. But one thing I'd like to keep in mind during this is that we're going to be essentially using the same format for sidewalks. And I'll dive into why that is in a few moments here. But first of all, wanted to jump in with some quick facts. A lot of things have changed over the last 5 years. And I mean, outside of all the other chaos, Lake Stevens has grown quite a bit. And in 2016, we had 94 center line miles of roadways. And in 2021, now we have 126 center line miles of roadways. So after the annexation, we have 34% increase in roadways maintained. That's significant. And at the same time, the annual pavement budget has not really changed. It's still been roughly $400,000 for maintenance only over the past 5 years or so. And also with sidewalks, in 2016, we had 114 miles of sidewalks, and currently Street Scan is out measuring and evaluating our sidewalks right now. So I'll have this number updated soon for us over the next month or so. And same thing with the sidewalks. So the annual sidewalk budget hasn't really changed that much over the last 5 years. So this doesn't account for inflation either. So we're doing a lot and we're achieving some great things, but at the same time, we're maintaining more roads, more sidewalks, and in addition to that, the population has also increased. So checked with Dave yesterday, and he gave me a nice updated number for population of we're almost approaching 40,000 people. So some significant growth even from the 2019 numbers. So we have more people not only within Lake Stevens, but we have a lot more people, traveling to Lake Stevens through this area, through all the other municipalities that are growing very rapidly as well next to Lake Stevens. So where are we at, or I'm sorry, where have we come? In 2017, we began the projects you see here. Those are outlined in orange. And then over the last 5 years, these are the projects that we have completed and color coded on the map. So you can kind of see and visualize, these are the major overlay projects that have been completed. This does not include maintenance, so crack seal and some of the minor, more preventative maintenance, but this is your larger projects that have occurred over the last 5 years. And I wanted to provide some nice before and after pictures, one of which is right here, North Davies Road, which is one that's recently been completed. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this road. Some people call it the Safeway roundabout, but you can see the before picture on the top left and the after on the bottom. So great looking road, definitely improved. And then also the one on the right here is more of a capital project. So this is the gateway into Frontier. That is a great project here. This is what I think we all want to see more of, right, is the capital project. So wanted to highlight this one and show some of the other work that Public Works and the city has completed. And then I'm not going to go through all these, but just wanted to highlight, to a greater extent, all of the work that's been completed over the last 5 years. Over $1.6 million of work that has been completed since 2017 up until 2021. So I'm going to take more of a dive into pavement now. And from here, we're going to do the same process with sidewalks. I'm going to dive into like, how do we make our decisions? How do we go about evaluating our roadways, indexing them, and rating the condition of those roads? And we're doing the same thing for sidewalks. So I just want to make that clear. We'll be coming back shortly in the next month or so and doing the same exercise for sidewalks. You might have seen one of these fancy looking vans driving around Lake Stevens. It takes them about 2 months, and they drive around and they use all these different sensors and scanners, and they measure the condition of the roadways. They use microphones for sound, they use radar, they listen to the roads, they take pictures of the roads. It's really great. It collects an amazing amount of data where we couldn't have done this 10 years ago. And the purpose of this is it really indexes the entire road network of Lake Stevens and gives us a better understanding of what roads need more work than others, what roads are getting to that critical point where they need maintenance quicker than other roads to avoid some of the larger, more expensive repairs. So what this van does is it looks for all these different things that you see on your screen here. So you might have cracks, you might have swells, potholes, weathering, and it measures all of these. And it gives us a PCI number. And we're going to talk a lot about PCI, so I just want to really focus on that for a second. So it's Pavement Condition Index. It's something that's used nationally. Different municipalities kind of use it as a standard. So you can take this to another municipality and generally mean the same thing to them as it means to us. So it's a nice standard. And what we do is, well, first of all, here's some examples, right? So like, what is a 60? What is an 80? We want roads to look like a PCI 100 or 80. 60 is getting to that critical point where it's getting close to failure. And you can see what happens really quickly when you get to a PCI 40 in the bottom left. That road is, failing. It's failed. and it continues on to PCI 20 and 10. Well, the goal of preventative maintenance is to prevent from getting to that that road failure. And to do that, we need to maintain a road with a PCI of 60 or greater. And the importance for that is that the cost to repair a road after it declines past the PCI rating of 60 increases dramatically, exponentially. And the cost to repair that road once it drops below 60 can increase 6 times or greater. So it's very important to maintain roads above 60. 80 is really the goal. So you can see the drop off here, the shape in the curve indicates essentially, your cost is going up and the road is degrading faster at a greater rate. So, and here's an example of why. Okay, so what's it cost to, repair and maintain the roads? Well, focusing on the PCI column on the left, you'll see the number 60. Well, that's kind of that magic number. Crack seals are $2 per square yard. And then once the road declines to below a 60, now you're looking at cost increasing dramatically. You're looking at an overlay of $30 per yard. And then if it continues on and continues to degrade and it's not maintained or brought back up to par, then it goes even further to a full reconstruction of $125 per square yard. So this is something that needs to be avoided. And so this is all the data. This is how we collect all this and how we measure what is a good road, what is a bad road, and how we repair it. But what is Lake Stevens, right? Lake Stevens is currently a 79, which is excellent. The goal is, as I said, 80. So Lake Stevens is looking pretty good right now. And the map that you're looking at, the green roads indicate that a road is in good condition or excellent condition. And the roads that are, as they go through that color scale, they go to yellow and orange, they start to degrade. And the roads that are red are roads that have failed. So they are in need of a complete overlay or a replacement. So what we're able to do is we use a program called StreetLogix. StreetLogix uses algorithms in a non-biased fashion. So it actually uses the data that StreetScan collects. So it takes all this data, compiles it, puts it into these algorithms. They consider how much traffic is on the road at any certain time, or it thinks about the wear and tear on the road. It looks at where hospitals are at, or high schools, or areas that are higher trafficked, and it considers that and actually models the wear and tear and degradation of the roads, which is fantastic. This is something that in the past would take a very large team of engineers and surveyors to go out and collect that data. And this is something now that can be modeled in a matter of a month or two. So now it's something that we have all the data collected for our streets at Lake Stevens, and now we can maintain that through the software. So another nice thing about the software is we can look into the future. So we can look out 6 years or up to 10 years is really the maximum that we can do with the software. But we can put in different budgets and say, okay, if we're going to continue with our current budget of 400,000 per year, where does that leave us in 6 years? And if we go to a larger budget, where does that leave us? So I kind of, on the left-hand side here, you'll see a chart. And really focusing on that goal of an 80 psi, we can see that if we continue on with our current budget of 400K over the next 6 years, we're going to the roads are going to degrade as a whole overall quite a bit. We're going to drop below a 70. So that's about 2 PCI per year we're degrading. So we're getting closer to that danger zone of 60 psi, where we start to see failures. We start to see a larger increase in cost to repair and bring those roads back up to par. So I put some numbers in here. These aren't, we can change these around, but I wanted to get, a good conversation going or discussion going around, get us thinking about, well, what happens, what number do we need to maintain our roads at 80 or better? And I put in some numbers, and what we end up with is to maintain roadways, the Lake Stevens road system, and maintain a 80 psi or better over the next 6 years, we actually need a number of more like 1.3 million, 1.35 million annually to maintain and repair our roads. Now, I want to make a note here that this is just to maintain the roads that we have now. So this isn't to build existing roads, new sidewalks, new transportation corridors. This is just to maintain the roads that we have now. And this includes the roads from annexation. So $400,000 is not going to maintain our roads. I just want to, really stress that. So I looked into this, and that's great that we need X number of dollars, but how do we fund this? And I'm just thinking, how can we come up with the money that's needed to fund uh, the budget that we need to maintain the roads? And looked at a couple different things here. And one, I think it's been discussed in the past, but I want to bring it up again, is that Lake Stevens does not have a sewer tax. And this is something that's very common across other municipalities. I actually went and looked at our neighbors. City of Snohomish has 5.3 tax, utility tax on sewer. Sultan 6, Arlington 5, Granite Falls, that's not a typo, it's 25. Stanwood 6%. And what this would do is this could generate up to $900,000 per year revenue that is vital to maintaining the asset, the largest asset of Lake Stevens. So that would give us, adding that 400K to the 900K from the sewer, that would give us 1.3 million. That's very close to what we need to maintain the roads over the next 6 years and maintain that 80 rating. Now, at the same time, I'm going to point this out several times, is that's just for maintenance and repair, and that does not include, new capital projects, road connections, building new sidewalks and sidewalk connections. So I just want to point out that, looking at the forecast, we're going to need more funds to maintain the roads in their current state, let alone expand and include new capital projects. So a couple others here I'm just going to touch on very quickly is auto tab fee. That would provide a potential $20 annual, a $20 annual tab fee that would provide around $550,000 per year, and then raising a small sales tax up to 0.2%. And I like this option too because it shares the cost of the roadway maintenance with those visitors that travel through Lake Stevens on a daily basis. So I do like the idea of that too, is sharing that cost with others and not just putting the burden on Lake Stevens itself. So, and then last but not least, just to touch on it, defer. So if we deferred all road work, didn't do any maintenance over the next 6 years, the roads would essentially be at the failure point of about 60 psi. And once we hit that, we're only about a year away from a complete rebuild, complete reconstruction of all the roads across the city of Lake Stevens. So that's if we did nothing for 6 years. So I just thought that was interesting and wanted to share that. So we're going to do the same thing for sidewalks once our data comes in from Street Scan in the next couple of weeks. But just wanted to share just some ideas. I wanted to get everyone educated and thinking about where we are now and where we need to be in 6 years based upon this data. So looking towards the future now, the algorithms also allow us to print out, or it really exports like a Excel file is really what it is, like a CSV file. And we can run various filters and provide basically a plan, a roadmap, no pun intended, for what work needs to be done year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, etc. And it provides us the most efficient and effective way to use our dollars to achieve the most, or essentially, the most bang for the buck is really what it tells us. Now, it's not perfect. There are things that the algorithms don't consider, such as, let's say PUD is doing work, there's sewer work, they're tearing up roads. Maybe there's a new development that will increase the wear and tear on roads in certain areas. So that's something that we have to consider too. So it's not just a silver bullet. It's something that we consider in our decision-making process. And this right here, what we're looking at now is just preventative maintenance. So this is with the budget I was just discussing. Now, moving on, this is for capital projects. So these are projects that go above and beyond maintenance and repair. So this is if we want to build a new road, if we want to, perform a any kind of major capital project, really expanding on the community, building sidewalks would be an excellent example too. This is something that we do. We need additional funds for matching state and potentially federal dollars for our grants. So we need to have some money set aside so we can get those returns by applying for those grants, having money to match. And that's another thing that, is really important that we need to continue to grow and build our infrastructure. So like going to sidewalks too, this is something we've been working on very diligently. Right now, you might see a Segway rolling around collecting data. We have a team from StreetScan, and they are doing the same thing that they do for the roads, but they use a Segway. The Segway maps all of the sidewalks. They're also doing the annexed regions, and they are pretty much mapping them, putting together a maintenance profile for us for those as well. So that's something that it takes a couple months. They should be wrapping up in another month, and then we're going to do the same exercise, the same fire drill that we just did with pavement. Only we're going to do that with the sidewalks as well. And sidewalks are interesting because, like one of my examples is I poured a new concrete patio behind my house, and I can't remember what it cost exactly anymore. It's about $800. And then I look at a sidewalk and I'm like, well, why does a sidewalk cost so much if I can pour my patio for $800? And it's because a sidewalk is really an assembly. There's a lot of different parts that go into it beyond the sidewalk. So you have the compacted gravel, you have the curb and gutter, you have storm pipes, you have conduits for utilities, trenching and bedding and backfill. If you cut the roadway to, build the curb, you're going to have to repair that roadway as well. So there's a lot of different things that go into this. And looking at our current maintenance budget alone, which is, for sidewalks is 200K, $200,000 gets you about 500 feet of sidewalk. So I just wanted to make that clear, like, what do we get for our dollar? And it's complicated because there's a lot that goes into a sidewalk. It's not just the sidewalk. So I just wanted to kind of, give a little bit better understanding and explanation of that. So that's one thing that I know is a big emphasis. We're working very diligently with not only that, but we're also teaming and partnering with Western Washington University. We're looking at the ADA sidewalk situation, coming up with some solutions to begin working on that as soon as this year for addressing some of those issues and fixing those issues. That's a very high priority for us. And quickly, just wanted to point out too the completed sidewalk projects from, I was just able to pull up to 2019 before the presentation, but wanted to throw on a map here and show some of the additional sidewalks that have been completed as well, and provide also some before and after pictures. With Callow Road, the one on the top left here, this is a really great project that we were able to complete where this connects, if I can remember the name, it's a Timbers Homes. It connects about 250 homes, the sidewalk. It gives pedestrian walkways to safely travel this road. And that was a really great connector right there. Oak Road on the right, top right side, another fantastic project that we've completed, and this connected the local high school right there. So some really great projects we've achieved over the last couple of years. But looking at the cost of these projects, it helps you understand as far as with the funding that we have, what we're able to achieve has really been fantastic. And I think the public works and everyone and planning and everyone's really achieved a lot over the last couple of years. So I'm not going to go through this long list here of small font text, but just wanted to really highlight that, this isn't complete either, but all the projects that have been completed are at the top there. You'll see several. Currently, we have 6 active projects. I think that's like 6 or 7 million that are in the works right now. And below that, you'll see projects that have been identified as potential future projects over the next several years, 5, 6 years even out. So just wanted to, show some of the work that we're working on now, entering design, conceptual work, investigating feasibility, just so we have some eyes on it. So. All right. And last but not least, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. We don't have the sidewalk data back yet, but I just wanted to point out that I just wanted to get some numbers out there, get us thinking about this as far as the untapped resources and revenues, as far as the auto tap fee, sewer taxes, potential increase in the sales tax. But we really need these funds. The funds we have right now haven't changed in, half a decade. They aren't able to even maintain or repair what we have now as far as pavement and sidewalks. So not only do we need funds to maintain what we have, but if we want to achieve some of these larger projects, we want to connect, different neighborhoods and communities with sidewalks. This is something we need to start thinking about. And, the point is, I just really wanted to educate based upon uh, what we've learned here and provide that information to council and everyone, so we could get, hopefully some discussions going on, and we, look at how can we get the funds that we need to achieve some of these larger projects, these capital projects. How do we get the funds we need for new sidewalks, uh, and modernize some of these areas, and also look at ADA too and improve upon where we're at right now. So that really concludes my presentation. I thank you all for your attention, and yeah, thanks again.
Okay, so I see that Angie has her hand up. Hold on just a second. I just wanted to thank Ryan for being the Debbie Downer tonight, and coming in and give us some good information about what's going on. We told Eric we were going to be nice and easy on him, but I think we can really get on Ryan if we want to, because he's been here before. This is information that I think is really important. We've not had this information in the past, and I'm looking very forward to what we have coming up in the sidewalks when that gets done. I actually saw the guy out there today, or maybe no, it was yesterday, I guess, out on the sidewalks, and I didn't know that's what he was doing. I just thought, wow, that's cool. He's got one of those segways. That'd be cool. Anyway, Angie, you're first.
So I was going to say virtually the same thing, except for the Debbie Downer part. I find this information super exciting. And I think this is the most comprehensive overview I've seen since I've been on the council. And it's a whole lot easier to have conversations around allocating funds when we have this level of detail. So Ryan, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate the information. I'm excited to kind of dig in and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angie.
One thing I'd like to
Steve?
point out
Go
too
ahead.
is I can run different models too. So if anyone would like to approach me in the future and run different models for different time periods with different budgets, different road conditions, that's certainly something that we can assist with and provide different options. But I just wanted to get, some information out there and get us thinking.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Angie.
So a question about the Granite Falls. Curious why they have 25% tax on their sewer, if you know that.
It's actually 25% plus a $2 fee. Yeah, it's it kind of stands out as an outlier, doesn't it? I just wanted to call that one out, even because I didn't want it someone to think it was a 2.5 instead of a 25. So yeah, it's from a 2018 report from Marysville. Marysville was doing the same thing. Marysville was trying to implement a sewer tax, and they were putting together all the information for the neighboring municipalities.
Also a question, I know that Snohomish and Monroe at least have a roads kind of excise tax thing that they've done. What other cities have something like that, and what is the amount of revenue that's generated by that? I know it's unfair to ask you that question, you may not have it readily available, but I'm curious what these other cities, I know they're smaller, but as I drive through Snohomish and Monroe, I see projects going on, and they have signs out saying this is supported by your tax dollars from the roads improvement, whatever deal. So I'm wondering if you have any information on that. If you don't, if you could share that at a later time.
I believe that's from their TBDs that they voted in.
And is that the 0.2% is what they're allowed to do as a council that they can have voted in?
Right, we can do a $20 Councilmatic $20 tab fee, or we can go to them, to the community and ask for an income tax. I mean, an income tax, I'm sorry, a sales tax increase.
That's what you're saying, that the TBD for Snohomish and Monroe that's what I'm referencing.
Snohomish did a TPD and they did the $20 tax. I believe that Monroe went out, and if I'm not mistaken, Monroe went out and asked for the $40 tabs to the community, because if you can go to 40 if you do it on a ballot. And I think that's what Monroe did. I could be wrong about that.
Thank you.
Mary, you're next.
Muted? Yes. So first of all, Ryan, this was amazing. This is something I heard many times when I doorbelled for my campaign. A lot of people are concerned about our roads and our sidewalks. And yeah, it does cost money. So I love learning more about the process. I'm always ready to learn more. And I think you did an amazing job with the presentation. And you may just have me come bug you, because I probably will have more questions. But thank
Please
you
do.
so much for this good presentation.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you, Council President Daughtry. Ryan, I appreciate this information coming forward. We've been kind of working on getting this factual information. I think Eric's been working on this for probably over a year. So it's nice to see we got some facts and figures. A couple of quick questions, though. You noted that we've completed 1.6 million in the last 5 years, yet we allocated $2 million for that over 5 years. Where did the 400,000 go?
I don't know, but I can check in on that.
Alrighty.
Some of it, yeah.
Seems like
chime in on that one. I know that some of that was used for capital improvement projects. Like one of them was for the South Lake Stevens Path. So while it wasn't part of an actual overlay, it was part of a capital project rather than the maintenance part of it. Another one was in 2019 we used a crack seal, which was also just a maintenance thing. So I think there was a close to $100,000 that was budgeted for that as well in 2019. So I know that's where kind of some of the discrepancies came from.
Alrighty. Okay. Thank you. Just quickly, average life of an overlay. When you talk about overlay, are you talking about grind and redoing the entire road surface, or are you just adding another layer?
Oh yeah. If Eric can speak probably in greater detail to it, but yeah, an overlay would generally be you grind down the surface layer that's been damaged or degressed, and then you repave that with fresh asphalt over top of that and roll it.
So that $30 a yard figure includes those items?
Yes, that
Yeah,
includes those.
Oh, I was going to jump in. So for this past overlay, just to kind of give you a little bit of history on that, that takes into account traffic control. It takes into account mobilization. What we did to get those numbers was we took our contract from this last 2021 overlay project and divided that by the actual square yardage of the projects of all the different areas to give us kind of a comprehensive look at it, rather than just looking at the two materials that you would for grinding and then the HMA that goes back. We'll give you a lot more comprehensive look at it so you can see everything that is involved.
Okay, so that when you project out, you use 2021 numbers. When you're projecting out 6 years, are you using an escalator factor or something for price increases?
I hate to admit it, but we do not include CPI or inflation in that.
Ouch. So we're looking, based on the last 2 years of asphalt price increases, we could be looking upwards of $1.5 million to $1.7 million.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So I guess council beware. These numbers are probably light as to where we need to get to. So you make our job even more difficult, Ryan. Thank you. Reality. The question has come up quite a bit lately, as you noted, as to sidewalks. Is there a necessity to install, quote, concrete sidewalks versus a asphalt walking path?
That's a good question for you. So Eric might be able to answer this, but fairly new yet, getting familiar with the EDS specific to Lake Stevens. So that's something I'd probably like to check on before I comment, that look at that in the code. But I do believe we have something in there regarding that.
Yeah, so we do have primarily concrete sidewalks are the preferred method. We have used things called multi-use paths, like we did on South Lake Stevens last year or year before. That is a 10-foot asphalt path, but that doesn't necessarily count as a sidewalk per se, but it is part of kind of that interconnectivity and that multimodal pathways that we can be using for the same funding when you're looking for the same types of funding when you're going out for grants. So there isn't usually a major difference in whether you're using concrete or asphalt.
Yeah. So, and I realize things that are underground, you know, when you widen a road and so forth, that doesn't change. But as far as the top surface, you know, asphalt goes a little bit further than concrete. So we don't have the safety features of a curb and such, but nonetheless, trying to get some safety or safer walkways on some of our arterials and so forth. I would hope that we would look at an asphalt path as kind of not a temporary situation, but something that we can kind of utilize to bring some things together and make those connections. So,
Kenzie, in the very recent past, we have been working on our EDS, our EDS details, and really enforcing when we're working with developments, and even the smaller developments. We've been enforcing this private access track, which gives us a 5-foot walking path with a stripe for pedestrians, specifically with a stencil and everything. That's been something that we have been looking into and making sure to enforce a lot more strictly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. We've been waiting for it for a while, and it's very helpful. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, real quick, a couple of things just so the council knows. Coming next week, I'm having a meeting with Western Washington University. Going to try to get some of their graduate students to take a look at our ADA sidewalk plan to update it. We do have a plan, but it does need updated, and I'm going to ask them to do a couple of things. One, look at where we're lacking on it, and also two, try to find some funding out there to help us get our ADA compliance up. The other thing I would ask Ryan and Eric to look at is what are some unique codes that we could put in to help save newly crack sealed or newly replaced pavement. And my thought is this: when we look at 91st, we spent a lot of money on 91st, and then within 6 months we've got cuts into it, right? Utilities doing stuff to it, and so I know that some cities will do a moratorium. Hey, just so you know, this next year we're gonna overlay this street. So you utilities, if you need to get work done, you need to get it done now, because we're gonna put a moratorium on that for 2 or 3 or 5 years, whatever that is. So while you guys are working on these plans, let's look at some unique ideas there to help preserve what we do get done.
Mm-hmm.
I would say too, Mayor, that the inter jurisdictional working with the sewer district and PUD water, I think we could really get a kind of comprehensive plan together. And that's what's really good about the Street Logics program that we're using currently. This new thing that we have the ability to go to the other PUD or the sewer district, or even find other developments and find out what their plans are, and we can input that into our Street Logics, and that will help us kind of better plan so we're not cutting into roads. We try to, as much as possible, not to cut into roads, but stuff like this will definitely be able to be avoided with this feature with the program that we're using now.
Gary.
As always, just a quick comment. I would encourage that we don't put moratoriums on asphalt cuts, but rather, if they do cut into an asphalt, they replace the entire section so that we have that road stability. Moratoriums are scary words for developers. So
yeah, and Gary, I agree with you on that. It's maybe not the better choice of words, but we got to figure out a way to get utilities to plan ahead and
Yep.
and not cutting up our road every 5-10 feet,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, another thing, Mayor, that some cities do with when developers get street cut permits, that there's an assessment based on the amount of the cut to pay for new roadway. So you develop a fund to pay for the cost of new roads as you're allowing street cuts. So it's another concept that is being used. And that puts the cost also too directly on those that are additional costs on those that are actually doing these cuts on freshly constructed or overlaid streets.
Are there any other questions for either Ryan or Eric? So now we know our work is cut out for us. We need to build more money trees. Okay, great. That's it for that. Thank you very much, Ryan and Eric, for your presentation. As Gary had said, we have been waiting for this for quite a while and talking about it for even longer. So looking forward to seeing what we can do, get accomplished. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Next up, we have the real exciting stuff of 2022 preliminary budget. And Barb, that would be for you.
I'm glad you all find it extremely exciting. We will move right on into this. So looking at our 2022 preliminary budget, I will say that the current budget and forecast do not include any of these additional revenue sources that Ryan just so wonderfully spoke of. I appreciate his input on that. So I do kind of mention we have some untapped revenue sources or some additional revenue streams available, but he put that very well in terms of what we need for transportation. So that is actually appreciated.
So Barb, could I just interrupt for just a second? One of the things that I wanted to ask you right up front about what he had told us, the sewer tax, let's say 6%, whatever that we have not done, but we could do, let's say 6%. Can we use that for roads and sidewalks, or does that need to be used for sewer?
You can use it for anything you want.
Anything
it is
we want.
Unrestricted.
Okay, that answers that question.
Yeah, it's an unrestricted revenue source.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Barb, just a quick question. Sorry to jump the gun
No
there.
problem.
So I've heard a lot of things about revenue, increasing revenue, and I realize we have kind of a lean budget. I haven't heard much consideration for areas where we could cut back, because I'm certainly hearing a lot of pushback in the community about increases in, fees and taxes and things like that. So if at some point we could hear about potential revenue or reduction in expenses that we might have, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't know that we have too much of that in here. Once I get into this, there are some minor changes that the mayor has made to his recommended budget from the requested budget. As you said, we do run pretty lean in our city. Most of our expenditures go towards capital projects and such, which we didn't do for many, many years. And so it kind of builds up to what we need now. So we can take a look at some of those things. We did look at that during the when COVID started to hit, and there was not very much that we could cut even then. So we, like I said, in mostly in the administrative departments, we run extremely lean. We weren't able to cut even the, recommended or requested 5% from our budgets. It would just be considering releasing staff at that point. And so with some of the priorities going on, finishing capital projects and enhancing transportation and enhancing park and recreation, There are costs involved with that. We can definitely take a look at that. I'm up for recommendations on some of those if we get into that. Okay, so this is the preliminary budget. This is the mayor's recommendations. So looking again at our 2022 priorities, I did actually go through a number of these priorities so that we can refer back to the priorities as we're going through the recommendations. So again, we have the APWA accreditation is a high priority in the Public Works Department. Going through and completing capital projects that are already in process. There are some new capital projects on the list as well, but some have been pushed out into 2023, just so we can focus on current capital projects and the current Public Works Department. Looking at streamlining the citywide processes, again, this is upgrading our technology and staffing certain positions. And then enhancing transportation program and funding, and then the park and rec program and funding as well, as that was a priority. So I'm going to jump right into the ARPA budget. That's one of the things we've been talking about for a while. As a reminder, the ARPA funds can be used to compensate the cities for lost revenues. Again, the city only had approximately $12,000 in lost revenues during that time. Necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband, assistance to households and low-income communities, assistance to small businesses or nonprofits, and then assistance to impacted industries such as travel, tourism, hospitality, and then employee pay for essential workers. So some of the things that we had already brought to council previously with regard to staffing was a few of the things on here. These are over the 3-year period from 2022 to 2024. So that $1.3 million is that entire period. Again, ARPA funds have to be, operating funds have to be spent by 2024. And for capital projects, capital programs, they have to be encumbered by 2024. So budgeted by 2024 and spent by 2026.
Hey, hold on. Angie, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you.
Oh, awesome.
I just want to make sure I'm really clear about the ARPA funds. I feel really nervous about using them for staffing because my understanding is that as of 2025, we would have to have a revenue source to cover those ongoing costs. And when I did just really quick back of the envelope math, we're looking at about $500,000 in ARPA funding for staffing, so that in 2025 we would need to have a revenue source to continue those positions, or else plan on those being temporary positions. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
That is correct, and they are currently in our financial forecast with those ARPA funds ending 2024. So the financial forecast that I have shown with the general fund and street fund and stormwater fund do include these positions ongoing.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Sean, you have a question?
Yeah, just really quick, Barb. Thanks for everything you're doing for us. You mentioned only realizing a $12,000 loss in revenues. I'm curious if you know offhand what the delta was in expenditures over the same time period.
We actually reduced our expenditures in 2020. I don't know offhand what it was, but we held back filling positions. One of the positions that I have up here is the surface water management field technician. That was included in the budget, but it's been on hold for a couple of years, just kind of waiting to find out. And then basically at this point, we're able to go ahead and fund that position. That's another thing with all of these positions actually listed here are in our strategic plan. Like the Public Works grant accountant was in the strategic plan for 2022. We just did it earlier in the year. The HR technician was a part-time position that went full-time with ARPA funding. And then the custodians, that was actually a request for 2021 as well. So these were actually already, like I said, the surface water field technician was, I think it was called a GIS analyst surface water person, basically to go out and inventory all of the surface water infrastructure and get that into our system. And that one was on hold. And then the other 3 had actually been requested in 2021. And then as things kind of went through, they hadn't made it through the budget, and then they actually were added. The Public Works grant accountant came forward to council on May 25th, and then the HR technician and the custodians came forward on July 13th. So those have already had a motion and an action to go forward with those. At this point, we're just kind of showing what priorities those actually are. They kind of help with, like the Public Works grant accountant, it helps with streamlining our processes, as this position will actually help the capital projects manager and the engineers from having to do grant work and some of that capital project paperwork. Kind of custodians, we assume that will free up some of the parks workers from having to set up the facilities and empty the trash cans, and allow them to go out and do park work instead of facilities maintenance. So there's justifications for these. If council wants to look at something else, we can do that, but they are included currently in our financial forecast.
No, perfect. Thank you. Just wanted some quick clarification on the expenditures.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then staffing and equipment that is in the 2022 for request. I'm not 100% sure what the position title is. The job description hasn't been completed yet, and it's safety, emergency management, risk management, risk manager. And this would actually help also with the AR or the APWA accreditation, as well as emergency management and safety. So this is a multiple, this it helps with various departments, is what I'm trying to say here. So that one's actually a 50%. Most of these are a partial funded through ARPA, and then the remaining is through other funds. And then emergency sick leave, obviously, if we have people that we have to quarantine, we are still paying them if we're sending them home to quarantine. So this will help us to get reimbursed for that from ARPA. Some other things that we discussed back in July, things weren't specific then, it was more generalized. We talked about surface water management programs, technology upgrades, and direct assistance. Some of the things that are currently in our, we want to finalize the proposed budget for ARPA, and some of those things include the food bank capital assistance. This will need to go out for RFP, but we did reach out to our people who are helping with, whether or not you can, all of the ins and outs of the ARPA grants through Association of Washington Cities, et cetera, to find out if we can do this. And there is a nexus between the capital assistance side of helping food bank. So I do intend to reach out to Snohomish County, since they have passed the same sort of assistance program, and they will have to go to RFP as well. So I want to reach out to them and see if there's a way we can piggyback off of their RFP, since they have more resources than we do to go out and do that. So I will be doing that here soon. Some additional funding to Volunteers of America, and then also the Senior Center. And then we did have some surface water projects. 117th Avenue, this is the surface water portion of the sidewalk project that we were discussing. The sidewalk project is in the other funds. 91st, 24th, Southeast Stormwater and the Fish Passage. This will allow us some additional funding to do other stormwater projects. Treatment plant feasibility study, that is already in the works, and then the Hartford infrastructure analysis is also in the works. So then we have some PPE supplies we would assume we need over the next few years, and then some citywide technology upgrades.
Angie, you have a question?
Thank you. I have two quick questions. For the direct assistance dollars, I'm assuming those are one-time amounts.
And I would believe so on the capital, and then the volunteer or senior center could be either way, but I think it would potentially be set up as one time.
Okay. And then do we have any idea, assuming the county council budget is passed as is, and that $600,000 remains dedicated to the food bank, and then we pass this budget that would dedicate an additional 500,000, do we have any sense of what the remaining dollar amount needed would be to complete the project?
I do not. Mayor Gailey, do you have an idea on that, or President Daughtry?
Yeah, so we'd be there. They'd be about 600,000 short, and I know they're looking for private side as well as going to the state legislature on this next session.
That is correct. It'd be about 600,000 short.
Thanks.
That doesn't include the construction costs that have escalated significantly recently. So those are being looked at as well to take into account the increased costs that they've incurred since they did the analysis.
Okay, go ahead, Barb.
Okay. So some additional things being proposed in the ARPA fund budget, some surface water management equipment that will help. So a mini street sweeper that is actually for the sidewalks and parking lots, so that we can keep the street sweeper on the road. So that would help out in those situations. And then a slope mower for in the drainage ponds. And then a future request is in there as a placeholder at this point, and it's for the Machias sewer stormwater project down in that area. I don't think this is, I think this is a good portion of that project, but as I understand, that project could be extremely expensive. And so I assume we'll look at doing some design work, et cetera, to see what other kind of funding options we have to go with these ARPA funds when we get to that point. But these are pushed out for a couple of years. We assume this will be one of the longer term projects under ARPA. And then we did determine that we could use funding for parks, for park restoration. One of the things that they said is that it's not for facilities unless you first use it for a vaccine or a testing facility first. And so we have a number of things that are outdoor restoration for park projects. Davies Beach Pier, a portion of that is going into ARPA, a portion will look at park mitigation. Eagle Ridge Park, we kind of went through that last time. The full ask is $995,000. We do have a $429,000 grant. I believe it's RCO, if I'm not mistaken. And then that leaves about just over $100,000 for park mitigation or other local funding source. Frontier Heights Park, this will finish with some sod, et cetera, some of the outside site restoration, and then the power line trail. Additional funding sources are, there's some roll forward funds as well as some additional park mitigation. And this definitely helps with our budget priority of enhancing our parks and park and rec. So, and then there's some economic development requests, looking at the Hartford market analysis, looking at what other businesses, et cetera, could go into the area, some small business relief, and then some economic development retail recruitment. This is potentially a 3-year program. There are some documents in your preliminary budget packet that I sent out that has a few more details about those. And that is actually takes us pretty much right to the mark of the $9.46 million in ARPA funds. Are there any more questions or concerns or recommendations for the ARPA funds? I know the mayor wanted us to bring back a document potentially next week to go ahead and get this approved through council via resolution to go ahead and move forward with these funding sources.
Angie, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm curious about the Cedarwood project and whether or not, I'm just curious about the prioritization of the park projects and where Cedarwood sort of lies.
So the Cedarwood project, oh, go ahead. You got this, Russ?
No, if you want to, Mayor, please.
Yeah, sure. So the Cedarwood project's going to be part of our legislative emergency ask. Looking for $250,000 that we can get from the legislature to just get that building stabilized, mainly get a new roof on it, and just make sure it's stabilized as we build that plan and create those partners for what we're going to do with that building. So that's why it was left out of this proposal here.
That's great to know. Thank you. Have we had any conversations with our legislative partners yet about that?
We have.
Great. Cool. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. So looking at our preliminary budget forecast, as I mentioned, there were only minor changes between the things that were requested in the recommendations. Some positions were held to mid-year start dates, mostly because of vacant positions that were already in those departments or those additional open vacant positions. And then it does include increased cost of living adjustment for the non-represented staff. In the base budget, there was a 3%, and this actually includes the 90% of the CPI. CPI this year was 6.3%, so it goes up to the 5.67%. And some of the things that we've talked about in your packet, there's some justification in there as to doing that, including the city has a history of doing 90% of CPI with the exception of when contracts have maximums. We have been doing this in the past, generally with represented staff. They also get the market rate analyses done at the same time as cost of living adjustments. And additionally, keeping up with the COLA will help with retention and recruiting, which we're having a really hard time with right now in our non-represented areas. This does affect approximately 55 of our staff and does get allocated amongst general fund, street fund, and stormwater fund. Councilmember Peter Shagan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question on the position staffing request, civil plan reviewer. Why are we holding off until mid-2022? And that is a position that's paid through fees.
It is paid partially through fees. I don't have an answer for you.
The accountant. All right.
You get the award for the night, Gary.
All right. Thank you. Finally.
So Russ, is that in your wheelhouse?
It is. That's a request that I had put forward, and through the city administrator and mayor taking a look at the budget, they made some recommendations on when some positions should come online. Council will recall we've done this as a tool periodically as general fund savings. As Councilmember Peter Shagan did mention, this position would be paid primarily out of permit fees. So it is potentially one that could come on board earlier, but probably not earlier than the second quarter due to the time it takes to do recruitment, et cetera, and working in with human resources and other positions. Beyond that, I would defer to the mayor if he had any other thoughts.
I don't have any other thoughts. It's something we can take a look at if that's how the timing on it would work out.
I think one of the other things is there's a couple other positions in the planning community development department that do need to be filled that are also partially paid with permit funds, and potentially getting the recruitment out there earlier doesn't necessarily mean we'll get a position filled, but we can definitely look at that if that's a desire.
I'd hate to put out, I mean, that being the case, if we are to advertise with the idea we're going to get somebody in mid-2022, it may be the third or fourth quarter before we actually hire somebody.
Yeah, and I do believe the intent is to get the when we say mid 2022, it's getting the job description, everything put together and out within the first couple of months of the year. And then it generally takes a good 60 days or so to actually hire.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you can see on the forecast here, there isn't a whole lot of change in this, but it does show that our requests with the preliminary budget does leave us a bit more money at 2027 than our requests. And again, these do include all of these, the ARPA funding stopping. It also includes assumed expected revenues from our new retail development on 20th Street, as well as annexation revenues beginning in 2023 from the new annexation area.
Barb, in your notes, in the notes on your position staffing request, it says you intend to hire a professional firm in the future to conduct a market analysis and staffing study.
Mm-hmm.
When do we intend to do that?
I will defer to Director Warrington or Mayor Gailey if they'd like to comment on that.
So we want to do that study this next year. We're finding that our comparables and, when we look at like that COLA adjustment, it's difficult for us to understand what we're looking like compared to other cities of our size. We want to do that across the board, look at all of our positions and make sure that we're comparable and we're not losing people to other cities and being a minor league getting people sent up to the big leagues as a training ground, so we gotta do that study that'll be over this next year.
Okay, so Anya, just in your opinion then, not to put you on the spot, but would this also give us a little bit of a look at who we're using as our comparables?
Yeah, we can set a scope for the consultant on who our comparables are, or we can ask them to identify, who the comparables are, competitors and comparables. That's kind of the advantage of going with an outside consulting firm that does this a lot. That deal with government agencies. I know Monroe had recently done one a year or two ago. They hired an outside firm and they went across, Snohomish County cities, and they went a little bit further than we can typically see as far as our just AWC survey goes. And the other factor we were looking at is, really looking in depth at services provided and staffing. We've done a lot of staffing plan work, and we'd like to match up that with the consulting firm as well to make sure we are on point and on track.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question. Do we know that that the turnover that we've been experiencing are related to salary and benefits and compensation? Do we do any sort of like exit surveys or exit questionnaires?
We do an exit survey and we ask about benefits, and a lot of people especially this year, are leaving for other employment that pays better or just growth opportunities in general.
Okay, thanks.
So Anya, I know it's a difficult question. How much of the pay disparity, like how significant is it? Are we talking 20% or 50% or 5% or what? I mean, are we talking about, I mean, we just had one leave today, but it's not, I mean, we've had several, over the last little bit. What numbers are we talking about percentage wise?
I don't know that I can nail it down to percentage. We try to stay in the general area, but of pay. But the last couple that have left, I know have left for significant pay increases. And that's also with, job opportunity and growth, moving up in the levels of positions, and that comes with the territory. But as far as a percentage, I don't really have anything. And that's kind of why we want to do this outside consultant to come in and do a market study for us, to really help us deep dive, and not just, us doing our own study. It's conducted and it's across the board, and we're not nitpicking certain positions that we're doing the study on.
So a follow-up question to that then is when we lose somebody like Carter that we lost, we're losing here soon to the private sector. And that's not even comparable, is it? I mean, private to public is not, they're not the same.
Right. To an extent. So we can talk to our consultants about that as well. And they do look at outside factors, like contributing factors, and they can make recommendations. But for an IT position in the private sector, you go work for Microsoft and make a bunch more than you can at local government. So, we are, we're realistic in that aspect as well. Thinking about pay is a lot of private sector jobs just pay more than government.
Okay, thank you.
John, did you have a comment?
I did, but it's fairly insignificant. But I'll ask the question anyway. I guess, Anya, it's been my experience. Several cities, several jurisdictions often do compensation studies, and I often hear that they're not happy with the results of said compensation study on the other side. So, how confident are you that? And if you've even gotten as far as to start to think about what firms you would use, that you would actually get a useful product on the other side, just recognizing that compensation studies take more than the average amount of time. They take a lot of time to scope out. They take a lot of time to conduct. And at the end, you still may end up with a product that doesn't necessarily give you the information that you need to make meaningful change. Are you confident that we kind of have a pathway that'll lead us to success here?
I think the idea is there, and we have not looked into any consulting firms or even done a scope of work. And I think I would be very careful and cautious in that mindset. I don't want to spend however much it's going to cost to hire this firm if we're not going to get the result we need. So I'll keep that in mind. But we haven't began to scope the work. This is kind of a thought we've been playing around with, and we haven't even been able to try to budget it. But we will be looking into it in 2022. So.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And it will have to come to council at that time.
We'll likely be able to take it out of vacant salaries at that point instead of increasing the budget again. But yeah, we will definitely bring it back to council when we have a contract or an idea of a contract in place.
Okay, so does anybody have any more questions up to this point so Barb can continue? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Barb.
Oh, I see Councilmember Dickinson waving at us.
Sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Okay. This feels like it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I see how not working for the public is you raise a lot more, get a lot more money for your work. After all, I was a public school teacher. I know about that. But I would love to see it get addressed. I think it'd be worth it. And I hope that people are feeling content to work for our city. because we've had some great employees in our city. I love getting to know them and watching them work so hard. And that includes everybody who hears my voice right now. So thank you. So I just, if there's anything we can do to find out more and do a better job or whatever we need to do, I think that would be good for Anya. So yeah, it'd be nice if we didn't have to pay for it though. I want it to be free, right? No, it's not the way it goes. But yeah, I do see this as an issue that needs to be addressed personally.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
I
ahead,
would
Barb.
also like it to be free, but we do continuously look at other factors that would maintain our staff other than just money. We definitely look at different kind of compensation packages and again, like longevity and time off. And so we are continuously brainstorming on how we can do this and still show as comparable to some of these outside industries. So I will just this is the proposed 22 organizational chart. I know it's probably hard to see. It is in your packet. There are a few things on here I will go into. One thing I wanted to note is that we did add Passport customer service in there based on council recommendation or request previously. We're not sure yet where that's going to fall, if that's going to fall back under the police department or back under the city clerk. It was under city clerk before it was under the police department. And our administrative manager at the police department has reached out to the Passport services to find out if we can get recertified and how we get recertified. So we do have that currently budgeted. We're not sure if that's one full-time position or two part-time positions right now, and we might need to come back to council if certification costs money, and we might need a scheduling software if the ones that we have don't actually fit with this service. So
Go ahead, Angie.
Can I hear what the rationale is for waiting until mid-2022 to add the 2 patrol officers?
I believe that was, I was going to say, Mayor Gailey, did you want to talk to that? I know the police were on board with that.
Yeah, the chief is on board with it. Of the positions, that was the difficult one, right? I would like to add them in January. The chief didn't feel that under the current hiring climate that he could get that many, because he's going to be down, I think it's 4 by the end of the year with projected retirements, and then adding these 2 to add 6 by the end of next year is going to be pretty tough for him, he felt. So as a cost savings, we went with half a year on those 2 positions.
Does that mean that he would need to wait until mid-year to begin recruitment, or could he start recruitment at the beginning of the year? And if, some sort of miracle happens and we do have an abundance of applicants, could we, I guess, I feel like this is such a priority. I would love to see some flexibility around getting these positions on board sooner rather than later.
So Angie, I'm totally with you on that, and I like your thinking. I think that if we can recruit and we get 20 great applicants and we can hire them, then we come back to you guys and say, hey, we got 20, we can fill all our slots in April.
Great.
Do you want to allocate the money? And we can do that.
Okay.
But I think for budgeting purposes, I think it's just practical to go half a year right now.
Okay.
I just
I
point
appreciate the
out,
flexibility.
I've heard recently that there's a whole bunch of them that lost their jobs recently.
A whole bunch of who?
That might be looking for work.
Yeah, I mean, there is that fact that a lot of the troopers there's a lot of troopers out there right now without jobs. I don't know what their plans are, and maybe we pick some of them up. That'd be great. A lot of different agencies have cut officers, and if that's the case, then then we'll bring that to this council and say, hey, we can hire them all in January 1 if you want to allocate the money.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to chime in here for a second because I think it's, I agree with Angie. I think it's very important to get these folks at least advertised, and hopefully we can get them on board sooner or later. Keep in mind, we made a pledge, at least I think we did, to the folks in the Southeast area annexation that we were going to increase our police capabilities. And we need to hold true to that. And so I would encourage us to recognize that and stay true to that and do what it takes to get those folks on board, because we're a growing city. As the mayor said, we're maybe down 4, hopefully not by the end of the year, but we got to do what we got to do. So I would encourage that we budget for it, and hopefully we can get those positions filled sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Gary, and I absolutely agree with you as far as the annexation side. For budget practicality side, I wanted to go half a year. But again, if Jeff comes up with 6 great, enough applicants to fill these spots, we'll come back to you and redo the budget.
Mayor, can I just say one thing on this? Is like you're saying, we're looking at 6 vacant by the first of the year due to retirements, because also the traffic officer Wayne retired as of next week, so that is another vacancy that I have to go back and fill too. Right now, I don't have anybody on the entry level list, and I have 1 lateral in background right now that's available off of our current list. When Julie Good returns next week, we're going to pull the list and see what kind of applicants we have. I know we have 1 lateral right now that applied.
Thank you, Chief.
Do you suspect, Chief, that we are going to see some more activity? Because there was 74 troopers laid off. Granted, a lot of them are in Eastern Washington, but there's other agencies that are feeling this effect.
Unfortunately, I don't think so, because a lot of those troopers were eligible for retirement too. So some of those folks actually retired from law enforcement and are not getting back into law enforcement. I know 3 or 4 of my friends that have stepped down from the state patrol and are not going back. We may see a few, but again, it's the mandate, the requirements for that, and what could happen that in the future, and that affects anybody in government right now. So it's hard to say what their plans will be.
Okay, I'm going to move on from this slide here. Council asked last time I was doing the presentation to see the org chart for the Park and Rec department. This is not, as I'll go back that slide, we did not include it in this slide, but we do have the park director here. It will break out, just for simplicity's sake, we left it in here as sort of just a person, but this is definitely the slide that you've seen in the past, which has the Park and Rec director beginning in 2022. And then the field supervisor position is also budgeted for 2022. And then the recreation division of planning, which is the park plan and development coordinator and the event marketing specialist, would fall under that department, as well as the parks crew leader, crew worker 2 and 3 crew worker 1s, and then the seasonal. So that is in here. That is focusing us towards our better park and rec department. So that is currently in the budget.
And let me talk a little bit about the Parks Rec director. My intent on that is to put that out on a very wide ask, maybe even looking at a headhunter group to make sure that we find the right person for that job. I see that person as not only hungry to build a new parks department, but also have the skills and capabilities to create a parks department that creates a return on investment for our city. I think that that's going to require us to really look around the country and advertise this position as an opportunity to grow a parks department from scratch. And I think that that would be appealing to some folks out there. So that's one of the reasons why we went with a mid-22, because I think that that recruiting process is just going to take a while to get us there.
Go ahead, Steve.
So Mayor, you mentioned return on investment. What are you referencing on that?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking there is just continuing that idea that Lake Stevens is a recreational jewel. So I want that person to be able to look at our current parks inventory and how do we better utilize that to bring in revenue sources into the city, whether that's tournaments or increased capabilities on those fields, turfing them out, and then also looking at our other opportunities nearby and working with the county to make sure that we're increasing all the field capabilities so that we're bringing in folks from out of our city and bringing their money into our city. I think that we've got to build a return on investment within our parks department.
Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I was wondering, is Jill Meese listening in on this at all?
No, she's
Yes.
not here tonight.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, she's amazing. And we do have a great parks. It's just, I would have loved to hear her make some comments on this. Do I think it would be great for our city? I do. I really do. But I would sure like to hear Jill Meese's comments on this because she's been front and center all this time working on our parks. And if there's somebody else on staff who has been in that as well, I'm happy to hear from them as well. And I'd be happy to talk to her, which I already have, by the way. But yeah, it's a lot of money, but for a good reason. And I do think it's something people care about. I know it's something, we have a lot of young people in our town who need that, playgrounds and ball fields and all that. So anyway, I just wondered if Jill were here. Okay, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Councilmember Daughtry. Thank you, Mayor. I mean, we've all talked about wanting to get a Park and Recs department up and going. We knew that it was a tall order. We knew it was going to be really expensive. And I think you have a prudent plan to kind of move forward with a mid-year start, recognizing the cost that's going to be there. And definitely understand your desire to go out for a broader search to cast the widest net possible for available talent. But I'd also say, in kind of echoing Mary's comments, we just hope that there's opportunity for internal talent as well. It's always good to see upward mobility from inside the ranks. But love what you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Barb.
Thank you. So this just breaks down, I know it was pretty hard to see the org chart, so this just breaks down the positions that are included and those that are held till mid-2022. This, again, as I mentioned on our city engineer's presentation, he did a really good job of talking about the transportation benefit district and tab fees and sales tax. We have talked previously about a potential levy lid lift for parks, something that we can continue thinking about and potentially working towards. And then also the utility tax. He pretty much took care of all of this for me, which is wonderful. I would say that one thing, the city stormwater utility, because we actually bill through Snohomish County on the property tax bills, we actually have, if we're intending to do a stormwater utility tax for 2022, we would have to pass that in November and get that to Snohomish County by December 1st to get it on the tax rolls. So there is a time limit on that one. Otherwise, it would be next year before we would be able to look at that one again. I just love this slide. This is a throwback from senior accountant Roundy, him and his color of money. Since we're going to look at some capital projects, I just wanted to kind of walk into this. As a reminder, these are our funding sources, REIT 1 and 2. We get basically property sales, we get real estate excise tax, traffic mitigation. It is used in specific areas that are where the funding is received. Park mitigation, so traffic mitigation, park mitigation, as I mentioned previously, did not come in as high as we anticipated this year. So we will keep an eye on it for next year. We did a moderately conservative look into next year. And then stormwater capital funds, that is based on our on all of our rate study that we did, and then grants, of course. And so this is another look at our capital project spreadsheet that I presented previously. It's probably hard to see. It is in your packet as well. The one in your packet does not include the first column, which shows that it's whether it's park or general government or transportation or surface water. So I wanted to make sure I had that in there for you. There are some color codes and some explanations in the packet talking about the highlighted numbers. Those are the difference. Those are the ones that have a difference between what was actually recommended in the mayor's budget and the original requested budget. We mentioned Cedarwood. This is to get roof and siding, get some of the basic stuff done on at Cedarwood before we go out and ask for some additional funding. And then Sunset Park restoration. This again is some fencing, some basic things, and then pushing that out into next year. And then doing the design for the South Lake Stevens multipath instead of, since we have so much going on right in that area, we didn't want to get started on construction of another path while everything else was going on. So we'll get the design going so that we could potentially go out for grants. So this does show your total project, the budget in blue for currently the 2021 local funds. That's everything that's left over will roll forward into 2022 budget. And then it kind of breaks down whether it's local funds needed or ARPA or grants. So, and then the one Festival Street, which is about 6 down, that one we do have a grant for that's sitting still with the legislators. And so we will likely do we'll pay for that out of REIT funds and then get reimbursed by the grant into the REIT funds. So for that one.
Barb,
Yeah.
can I interrupt for just a second? REIT funds.
Mhm.
I don't need an answer tonight, but I was wondering if you might be able to do a little chart for us later on and send it out to everybody on what is permissible to be paid for by REIT.
Absolutely. I actually have one of those already ready and put together. I can send out.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Angie.
Sorry, my mouse isn't working, so I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do things. Really quick question. Festival Street restroom. Why do we need a restroom there when we have one in the mill and one across the park at the playground?
So I'll answer that question. Great question. So that is it's a small building that will not only have a restroom in it, but it'll also have like space to be able to do, when we have events down in that Festival Street, they'll be able to kind of be the control center for that, whether that's a ticket booth for ice skating or visitor center information. So it's not just the restroom, but we also do need the restroom portion of it. You know, the problem we have leaving the mill open all the time is that it just gets vandalized. And these restrooms would actually be able to stay open, much like the ones we have down by the park. A little bit more bulletproof, less vandalism capabilities on them. And so during normal park times, those could be left open for the upper portion, and then we'd have the lower restrooms for that lower portion of the park open. And we were originally going to hold off and just stub this all out and then maybe look at doing it in the future. But due to the way construction works, if we do that, it's just a hole. We gotta actually build it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Barb.
Thank you. So I won't go through all these. This is just a breakdown looking at your park capital program, what is continuing. The Caballero Park sign isn't included in that spreadsheet, but it is a roll forward from 2021. And then these are all of our park capital requests that are included in the recommended budget. For transportation, as I said, I broke these all down before adding the column that said what was park, what was street, what was storm in the capital project information. And so you can see we have a number of these that are continuing on from 2021 that we've either added some additional money to, or we're just rolling forward funds to finish them. The discussion of the sidewalk capital, we have not contributed money to the sidewalk capital project fund in a number of years. We used to contribute from the street fund. We only did it for 3 or 4 years where we contributed money into that fund. And then we just utilized the fund for matching sidewalk grants. And then a couple of years ago, we started utilizing it internally as we were able to do, we brought people on board who could actually build the sidewalks in the city. And so that has been used for that. That fund does not have a lot of funding left. And so we will need to start thinking about how to continue funding that, that additional $200,000 a year that Ryan was talking about earlier, probably starting in 2023. So right now we have it budgeted, as well as some of the other sidewalk projects, but we are utilizing some REAP funds and some traffic mitigation to finish some of these other sidewalk pieces as well. So definitely something that we're going to need to consider for revenue sources for that those capital projects in the future. And then surface water capital, we talked about moving some of these projects out, but most of them are at almost at stopping points, whether it's completing them or getting designs completed so that we can then go for grants. And so there are a couple of newer ones in there, again, for feasibility and some necessary replacements. And some, Ryan had a much more extensive list of future projects than I have in here. These are ones that were actually requested in the 2022 budget, but we're actually holding off on. The Main Street and the 16th Street, there is some funding that went into this for some design. It is being pushed out until we can get some additional grant funding, get some of those through the legislature. The North Cove boat slips. We have a lot going on and a lot going on in the parks right now. And again, with the getting the accreditation being a high priority, we kind of need to slow down on some of these projects a little bit. And then there was a request basically as a placeholder for a property acquisition for park space needed down in the southeast end. And right now we're kind of putting that on hold. And if there is a site in mind, potentially getting a first right of refusal on those properties and then kind of moving forward from there. I have gotten a few questions on the civic campus recently from citizens asking if this is still an option or what's happening with that. And so I just wanted to say on here that, it is still a discussion. Funding options have come forward to council a number of times, and it is still in a future project file at this point.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, I was just curious, who do we have for grant writers right now? Who is doing our grants? We keep talking about looking for grants. I was just curious, who do we have for grant writing right now?
Director Russ Wright.
I do the majority of grant writing along with Public Works.
Okay. Do we have any when writing for the parks?
Yeah, myself, Jill.
Okay. Okay. So you and Jill and Russ, or excuse me, and who else is doing grant writing?
In Public Works, we've had the city engineer, past city engineers have done some of our grant writing.
I'll just say great job. We keep talking about we need grants, we need other funds and so forth. And I just keep looking at the budget and think, gosh, I wonder who else, if we need to, whoever we're hiring, we need to make sure that we got the ability to grant write. I know you're stretched thin already, Russ. So the only thing I was going to say is, boy, do we need grant writers. So
yes, we do.
Thank you, Marcus. Go ahead, Barb.
So that is pretty much all I have right now in our in my presentation. Next week, I will put forward any changes you have and basically turn preliminary budget into proposed budget and get that ready for a public hearing, which starts on the 9th. That's when we'll do property taxes and get those passed and then go on from there. I know we discussed the council meeting or the council workshop on November 2nd and potentially canceling that. President Daughtry had mentioned today during our executive staff and reminded me that at least one other year, potentially two in the past, we have done a special workshop a different day of that week if that's needed. And I don't know if that's something that anyone is interested in at this point. I'm not sure what kind of questions or further discussion we need to have before moving forward.
Make sure the council understands what we're talking about here. I'm pretty sure you do, but in the past, we've been here for a long time. Mark has been here a long time. When it comes up to the election night and us having to, be in a council meeting during election night, it's never really worked out very well. And so we would like, in the past, we have actually changed the day of that workshop to, we used to be on Mondays, we'd change it to the Wednesday or whatever after that night. And recently, in the recent past, we now meet on Tuesdays. It happens to be election night itself. I would like to put it to the council that I believe that we may need this workshop with the budget that we're trying to get passed. And I would recommend that we do it Wednesday night, the 3rd of November instead of the 2nd of November. And so that's up to the council. What do you desire? Russ, go ahead.
Thank you, President Daughtry. That would present a conflict with the park board for that evening with a couple of the council members that may need to attend on Wednesday night.
And then Monday night is the Veterans Commission is a potential problem also. Angie, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest Monday night instead of Wednesday, just because in past years, election night sometimes continues into Wednesday and Thursday in terms
Friday
of
and Saturday.
Right,
and Sunday.
right. But with the, with the conflict with the Veterans Board, then maybe that's not an option.
Well, we have two of the councilmen on right now that are in the Veterans Commission. What do you think about postponing the Veterans Commission for a week?
Okay with it.
Marcus, how about you?
I'm okay with it as well.
All right, I'll reach out to the commission through Kelly and find out if we can find a better day for the Veterans Commission. And if so, then the council would probably be all right with meeting Monday night at 6 o'clock for a workshop on the budget. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Getting some head nods. Okay, thank you. We will work on that and I'll get it out to you right away as soon as we figure it out. All right, Barb, great presentation. Only made better because I'm going to have lots of questions over the next week. Going back to, you don't need to bring this up, but going back to the org chart, I remember when there was not very many boxes on that. There is a heck of a lot more boxes on it now than there ever has been. I'm actually kind of glad to see that. We're a growing city and we need the people to help the city keep going. Does anybody else have anything for this portion of our workshop? If not, we need to get ready to go into an executive session. Is everybody ready to do that on the Teams?
I just want to say I appreciate all the questions. That was great. It was great interaction and having those discussions versus waiting to ask the questions and thinking we're moving forward. So I love having all the questions up front. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. I just want to note I'm having some technical difficulties, and so it may take me a minute to get to the team site, but I'll be there.
Okay.
Hey, question maybe for Greg on this. Since there's no action to follow, can we just shut down this meeting to go to the next one, or do we need to come back?
Well, we need to come back and adjourn.
Okay.
Yes, right. So we still need to give an estimate of approximately how long that will be, even if we don't intend to take any action.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move then.
Okay, so how long are we going to be there?
Probably 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. I'll give you 12 minutes so we can get everybody in there. Just to remind the council and everybody else that's in here in this panel, make sure you take off your camera and mute before you get into the Teams.
Before you guys go, can I announce the executive session topic in the RCW, please, for the record?
Yes.
Okay, so the executive session is for the performance of a public employee per RCW 42301101G. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yep. Did we lose Mary?
And she was late to the other one too, so we're waiting on Mary.
Okay.
And as soon as she gets in, we will adjourn.
All we have to do is have a quorum to adjourn.
Yeah, you only need
Well,
four.
that's
to
true.
adjourn.
Yeah, and we
Move
have
to adjourn.
no motion necessary. We are adjourned.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Brutal, brutal.
I'll wait for
I'm gonna
Mary.
stay on. I'm gonna
I
stay
was
on.
gonna say, I'll stay on and let Mary know.
Yeah, I'll stay on. And let Mary
She's
know.
coming on right now.
Good night,
There she is.
everybody.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard that you.
Mary,
turned
we're
in
adjourned.
Bye,
your resignation and
Mary.
you're gonna be taken on as LSU coach. Is that true? Is there any truth to that allegation?
You know, I wouldn't touch that coaching job right now.
Yeah, 2 years removed from a national championship. Hard to believe.
Yeah, it's vicious. It's how the mighty fall.
That's right.
Have a
Hey,
good
so,
night, you guys.
Yeah, enjoy
Sorry, I
your
don't
day
want to.
with,
I don't want to cut
okay.
this conversation off.
But she's cutting this conversation off.
She
Okay.
wants to go to bed. Take care.
You guys feel free to talk all night. Okay, bye.